Some people don't just visit the edge of the world, they choose to live there. A village clings to a sheer cliff with no road leading in, and a house sits balanced on a single narrow ledge above open air. And elsewhere, entire homes are built directly into solid rock, swallowed halfway into the mountain itself. This is not desperation, and it is not an accident of geography. In this journey, we will take you to the most insane houses ever built, in the most dangerous locations on Earth, where the will to live somewhere beautiful outweighs every risk. Walking along this heart-stopping, narrow, grassy ridge demands absolute caution, since a single misstep sends you plunging straight into a deep abyss. That breathtaking experience belongs to Kala, a lonely lighthouse standing at the northern tip of the treacherous island of Kalsoy in Denmark. It's right here that the filmmakers of No Time to Die chose to shoot the moment James Bond was killed off for the first time in the franchise's history. But to reach that viewpoint, visitors must walk across steep grassy slopes where the trail narrows more and more, almost disappearing into the fog. The closer you get to the headland, the harder the Atlantic wind lashes against your body, while cliffs on either side plunge straight down into the sea. Kala impresses not because of its size, but because a tiny lighthouse still stands amid fierce winds, thick fog, and open space where even one careless step becomes dangerous. So surreal that many people could easily mistake it for movie CGI, Wang Jianggu appears inside a giant granite crack, with two cliff walls rising at nearly 90 degrees. Waterfalls drop from more than 328 feet above, blending with the thick mist that often covers the whole gorge. Fog appears up to 150 days each year, hiding much of the valley floor and making the architectural complex look like a floating island. Thousands of high-strength steel beams are driven deep into the cliff, creating supports for traditional wooden houses clinging to the mountainside. When sunset fades, red lanterns and golden lights turn on together, transforming the hanging cliff houses into a bright glowing strip inside the gorge. From an abandoned stone quarry, Wangxiangu now appears like a hanging valley where human engineering has turned old cliff walls into ancient-looking and surreal living space. Looking up in the middle of Setenil de las Bodegas, visitors do not see familiar tile roofs, but a huge rock mass reaching more than 33 feet over the town. The town formed inside a canyon carved by an ancient river, creating natural rock overhangs wide enough for people to tuck their homes beneath them. Residents do not break the mountain or build all four walls, but only add a white front wall across the open space, turning the rock face into the ceiling and back of the house. Inside many living rooms, the roof is not concrete or plaster, but a natural stone surface weighing tens of thousands of tons, sitting close above the living space. Under the rock layer that covers almost the whole sky, whitewashed walls press against the grey cliff, while many homes still stay around 64 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit all year. But because many homes lack rear ventilation windows, smoke can become trapped if a fire happens, turning this unique housing style into an unpredictable risk. Like the landing site of an ancient spaceship inside a Green Mountain bowl, Weiribo appears with dark pointed roofs, gathered in a circle among the forested mountains. At 3,937 feet high, Weiribo has almost no road access or phone signal, so visitors must walk through a mountain forest trail to reach it. Its most striking feature is 7 cone-shaped houses, each about 49 feet high, arranged in a circle around a stone altar at the center. These structures are built from wood, bamboo, and forest rattan, without using iron nails to hold them together. The thick palm leaf roof stretches close to the ground, helping each house resist mountain rain, reduce strong winds, and stay warmer when cold mist covers the valley. Under that enclosed roof, 6 to 8 families live together around a central fire without private dividing walls. This is a place where people accepted total isolation from the mainland to build a peaceful settlement on a rock once soaked in blood. This is Belil, a beautiful old village rising about 65 feet above a limestone peninsula on the western coast of Portugal. When the tide rises, surging seawater completely swallows the only sandy road and turns the peaceful village into a lonely island in the Atlantic Ocean. Behind its poetic beauty and peaceful isolation lies a brutal past, because this island once served as a notorious whaling station. Countless giant whales were dragged onto these rough, rocky shores, where hunters cut them apart and collected their blubber to produce oil. Today, the waves have washed away every visible trace of that deadly past, while the stunning scenery and poetic isolation have turned Belil into a beautiful refuge for people seeking peace. Clinging to fragile rope ladders along a vertical cliff was once the only route to school for young children. That daily nightmare belonged to Atulaia, a mountain village standing about 2,624 feet above a river valley in China. In 2016, photos of children climbing this deadly ladder spread across the globe. That shocking event drew massive attention from the world. Public pressure forced local authorities to build a steel stairway nearly 2 miles long, and the massive structure later set a Guinness World Record for its vertical rise. Yet, in a cruel twist, that great construction, once saving many young lives, now only leads to an abandoned settlement. Most residents have already moved down to a safer home. Left behind is a giant symbol of survival, standing alone among the clouds, preserving the memory of a life once lived beside a deep cliff, with death always close. A giant stack of wheat seems to rise from the forest, but Maijishan is actually a reddish-purple sandstone cliff, hollowed out into a giant honeycomb. The cliff face still holds 194 caves, many sitting between 100 and 260 feet high, connected by narrow wooden staircases clinging to the vertical rock. Hidden behind these dizzying walkways are more than 7,200 carvings and about 11,000 square feet of wall paintings, turning the entire mountain into a vast Buddhist art treasury. Along the highest corridors, wind cuts through wooden railings while the forest opens up far below, enough to make anyone feel the sheer boldness of this structure. Because the rock here was too soft for fine carving, many statues were not carved directly, but built on wooden frames or stone cores and layered with clay instead. Generation after generation of artisans continued the work for more than 1,600 years, each era quietly leaving its own mark. Where two rushing rivers meet below, a rugged rocky outcrop rises up, carrying one of the oldest sacred symbols in the country of Georgia. Built in the 6th century, this stone structure carries a humble beauty that has withstood every storm of time in ways almost hard to believe. Rather than following the usual path, ancient builders created a groundbreaking cross-shaped design, turning this place into a classic model for the entire Caucasus region. Looking out from its moss-covered walls, an entire valley and the ancient former capital come fully into view. Few realize that before the first stone was ever laid, a wooden cross stood alone and silent on this hilltop for 2 centuries, shaping this land into holy ground. Carved deep into that enduring stone are ancient characters carrying the voice of Georgia, echoing across nearly 1,400 years to tell a story of true endurance. Hidden in the desert, Mar Saba Monastery clings to a limestone cliff sloping up to 80 degrees, where even construction becomes highly risky. At the bottom of the canyon, reflective limestone can push summer heat above 104 degrees Fahrenheit, while winter nights drop close to freezing. Instead of spreading across flat ground, the whole monastery stacks along the cliff, with alleys, stairways, and passages woven together like a maze hanging beside the drop. Inside that maze are 14 stacked levels, holding more than 110 small cells and rock caves carved deep into the mountain. From far away, the structure almost blends into the yellow-brown color of the desert, so in the past, it was very hard to notice from outside. Only after crossing a long stretch of desert do people see Mar Saba appear beside the cliff edge, with a dry stream bed below, making it look like a stone fortress separated from the world around it. Floating among white clouds at about 7,200 feet, Gegeti Trinity Church appears small beneath the massive snow-covered peak of Mount Kazbek. Built in the 14th century from dark stone blocks, the structure still looks almost original after centuries facing strong winds, ice, and long winters. Without any elaborate decoration, its central dome and separate bell tower make it a distinctive religious structure amid the Caucasus Mountains. During dangerous periods of war, the upper level of the church was once used to protect important relics and part of the royal treasury. From the town of Stepantsminda, visitors can follow a mountain road or climb steep slopes, watching the houses below shrink smaller as they near the hilltop. Standing between a deep valley and the shadow of a snowy peak, Gegeti shows how a small structure can become a powerful symbol of human endurance and faith. Would you dare enter a lonely fortress above the clouds, where monks' remains once lined the passage to the main church? Sacra di San Michele is a massive stone abbey on a mountain in northern Italy, standing 3,156 feet above sea level. From afar, this entire grey stone structure seems to grow straight from the steep cliff. It is breathtakingly beautiful, but extremely dangerous, so only the most persistent people dare to visit. To reach this gloomy church, you must gamble every footstep. You have to climb a narrow stone staircase hanging over a deep valley. That staircase is known as the Staircase of the Dead, because monks' remains were once placed inside niches lining both sides of the path. Nearby death and a waiting deep abyss surround this place. Yet this building's proud existence proves human readiness to abandon all safety limits to touch their faith. Building a home on a dry black lava field seems completely insane because a volcanic eruption once swallowed an entire town on this same ground. The disaster struck Kalapana, an old fishing village on the big island of Hawaii, where some areas disappeared beneath volcanic rock reaching 85 feet thick. In only 10 months, lava covered the community with an average depth of about 33 feet and destroyed more than 100 homes. No residents were killed because the lava moved slowly enough for people to receive warnings and leave the danger zone in time. After the disaster, their land titles were still valid, so some families returned and built new homes on the lava that had buried their old houses. Today, people still live in Kalapana even though they know the lava could return and destroy everything again. Accepting an endless environmental battle, people built a resilient settlement right in the middle of a sea of sand that never stops swallowing everything. Massive dunes shift every day, threatening to bury the entire town. Local residents must constantly shovel the sand away just to protect their fragile living space. Behind this brutal fight for survival lies a priceless piece of history. This place was once a bustling desert trading hub back in the 13th century. At its peak, the city held 30 libraries, drawing scholars from across the Islamic world to study and debate. Today, only about 5 private libraries survive, holding more than 6,000 ancient manuscripts, some dating back to the 12th century. Chinguetti is not just fighting to save its homes from the sand. It is fighting to save the memory of an entire civilization from being buried forever. There is a place on Earth where the nearest other people live 1,500 miles away, separated by an entire ocean. Oh? That place is Tristan da Cunha, home to about 250 residents living together in a single settlement in the South Atlantic. The entire island is actually one massive volcano, rising 6,765 feet high, with a heart-shaped lake sitting right inside its crater. In 1961, that volcano suddenly erupted, forcing all 264 residents to evacuate to England in a short amount of time. For many of them, it was the first time they had ever left the island, stepping into a modern world that felt completely foreign. But by 1963, nearly everyone chose to return, rebuilding their homes on the very ashes that had once threatened to take their lives. Not rising from the ground, Sassi di Matera is carved deep into the cliff, appearing like a cave city living inside the limestone mass. Its structure is so complex and layered that the roof of a lower home can become the floor of the family above. On the edge of a ravine, about 1,000 feet deep, in an area with less than 20 inches of rain each year, ancient residents survived through an underground water storage system. The porous rock works like a natural air conditioner, keeping the caves stable at about 59 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, even when summer heat can rise above 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Although the caves once helped people adapt to stone, water, and climate, they gradually became cramped and deteriorating living spaces, forcing about 15,000 residents to leave in 1952. After many changes, the ancient stone landscape glows again at night, when lights from the cave windows make Sassi di Matera look like a starry sky turned upside down into the ravine. Perched on the edge of a white limestone cliff, Bonifacio appears like an ancient fortress hanging high above the sea. Strong waves have carved more than 30 feet into the base of the cliff, creating a large hollow that makes many houses above look as if they are jutting out over empty space. Although the city often faces wind gusts of up to 75 miles per hour, its inner side is still protected by a natural harbor set deep inside a crack nearly 5,000 feet long. To avoid attacks from the sea, ancient residents built ground floors without windows, turning rows of old houses into a defensive wall. Looking up from the sea, the old houses, more than 200 feet high, seem to cling to the cliff edge, separated from the empty space below by only a thin line of rock. Stepping inside, visitors must move through dark, narrow alleys where stone walls press close together as if holding the whole city between the cliff and the deep sea. Clinging to a vertical cliff, Santuario Madonna della Corona appears like a sanctuary pinned into the mountainside at 2,539 feet above sea level. Below the balcony is an open drop about 1,312 feet deep, where fog often covers the valley and makes the base of the mountain seem to disappear. The structure has an unusual half-built, half-carved design, with an inner wall exposing the rough limestone cliff of the mountain core. To reduce the risk of collapse, workers once used explosives to remove nearly 1,000 blocks of stone, helping the whole structure move deeper into the mountain. To reach this sanctuary, pilgrims had to climb about 1,500 steep steps, carved into the mountainside. Looking down from the balcony, the nearly vertical view can easily overwhelm visitors in a cold, open space with less sunlight than the surrounding area. From far away, Gams Shu TL almost seems inseparable from the mountain, appearing at 4,921 feet high, like a stone village left behind by time on the mountain top. To adapt to cold winds and harsh terrain, ancient residents carved deep into the mountainside, using the natural rock face as the fourth wall of each home. Because the flat space was extremely limited, the stone buildings were stacked vertically, turning the roof of the lower house into the terrace of the house above. Over time, wooden roofs and doors slowly rotted away, leaving empty windows opening straight toward the valley below. Grass-covered paths, cracked stone arches, and abandoned walls make Gamsutil feel like an old stone maze clinging to the mountainside. With no safety railings, visitors must step very carefully across stone roofs and narrow paths lying directly above a deep drop. As soon as you step into Spiti Valley, the altitude of 12,467 feet makes breathing feel heavier inside a cold, rocky valley with almost no trees. Because it lies in a rain shadow with less than 7 inches of rain each year, the slopes here appear almost bare, with only dry earth and rock stretching under the harsh sun. In contrast to the cold, dry cliffs, the valley floor is cut across by glacier-fed water with a jade green color standing out against the brown rock. To adapt to the harsh climate, residents build rammed earth houses with walls nearly 3 feet thick, absorbing sunlight during the day and releasing warmth at night. The villages appear like small green patches on the slopes, keeping life going through hand-dug water channels that bring meltwater down from the mountains. This isolation makes reaching Spiti Valley require travel along narrow dirt roads with no guardrails, running beside cliffs and drops thousands of feet deep. The entire mountainside, sloping more than 45 degrees, is almost covered with red brick, where Rosina appears through thousands of houses stacked on top of each other. Because nearly the whole surface is covered with concrete and has very few trees, the alleys inside are often 5 to 9 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the surrounding area. Set among rocky mountain terrain, this neighborhood also faces strong sea winds hitting thin metal roofs and tightly packed blocks of houses. With no open land left for building outward, many homes rise up to 9 stories, where the ceiling of the lower house becomes the floor of the house above. Most buildings expose rough, unplastered brick walls making the house fronts on the slope look unfinished and crowded. Inside Rocinha, residents must move through alleys less than 3 feet wide and thousands of steep concrete steps that become slippery after rainy days. Shaped like two hands joined in prayer, Shirakawago stands out with thatched roofs nearly 3 feet thick and sloping up to 60 degrees. Set among mountains more than 6,562 feet high, the valley often receives snow 7 to 10 feet deep, so the steep roofs help heavy snow slide down more easily. The houses all face north to south, helping reduce the force of wind blowing through the valley and helping snow on the roofs melt faster under sunlight. In winter, snow covers the thatched roofs and the ground, turning the whole village into a white cluster of houses, quietly enduring the cold valley. In contrast to the bright white scene outside, the inside of each house is darkened by soot from the central hearth, which is kept burning to reduce moisture, mold, and termites. More than just an old village to look at, Shirakawago still has cooking smoke, fields, and the daily rhythm of local people continuing among harsh natural conditions. Rising straight into the sky like a giant stone sword, Taiyun Mountain Taoist Temple sits on a peak nearly 90 degrees steep at about 5,463 feet high. Although 3 sides around it are steep vertical cliffs, the tiny temple, smaller than 65 square feet, has stood against mountain winds since 1582. To reach the summit, people must climb stone steps carved into the mountainside, with some sections as steep as 80 degrees and narrower than half an adult foot. The hardest part to believe is that ancient builders still carried stones and beams weighing hundreds of pounds up to that vertical peak in an age with no helicopters or modern cranes. Saint-Michel-d'Aiguille looks like a needle of volcanic rock driven straight through the town of Le Puy-en-Velay in central France, rising 279 feet above the streets below. This tiny Romanesque chapel clings to the very tip of an ancient volcanic plug, its footprint barely wider than the summit itself. Only 200 58 stone steps carved directly into the rock and winding around the cliff face lead up to the entrance, forcing visitors to climb in single file with a sheer drop never far from either shoulder. The structure was built on the order of Bishop Godescalc, who wanted to honor the Archangel Michael at the highest point he could find. In 1955, restoration workers cracking open the marble beneath the altar found a hidden cavity stuffed with medieval relics, sealed away and forgotten for nearly 1,000 years. The chapel has survived lightning strikes, revolutions, and centuries of mountain wind, and still stands watch over the town below. Rising 755 feet above the city of Cusco, Sacsayhuaman stands as one of the greatest architectural achievements of the 15th century Inca Empire. The complex features 3 stone tiers built in a striking zigzag pattern representing the sharp teeth of a sacred puma. What stuns modern scientists is that blocks weighing more than 100 tons were hauled up this hill without a single wheel. These stones were cut and fitted with such precision that not even a thin knife blade can slip between them, and no mortar was ever used. But here is something few people know. The structure once stood far taller than it does today, before much of it was torn down to build colonial Cusco. Standing in the shade of these remaining walls, visitors are touching the final piece of a structure whose other half became the foundation of another city entirely. Laojun Mountain, China. When a sea of clouds rises high enough to swallow the lower slopes, the summit looks like an island drifting across the sky. This mountain was formed from a giant granite mass, carrying traces of geological change that lasted about 1.9 billion years. Its highest peak rises to about 7,274 feet. Where the air is thinner, the temperature drops sharply, and thick fog covers the area for more than 200 days each year. In winter, temperatures can fall to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, freezing water vapor quickly on plants and cliffs and turning the landscape into a sharp, icy world. About 2,500 years ago, this place became linked with Taoist tradition and turned into a sacred mountain of cultivation, retreat, and alchemy legends. The most unbelievable part is not the structures on the summit, but the fact that people once carried building materials to heights above 6,500 feet to create them among clouds and cliffs. Seen from above, Mori in Peru looks like a giant fingerprint pressed into the Andean highlands, its terraced rings shrinking gradually toward the center. Sitting at about 11,400 feet, the site holds 3 large hollows, the deepest one dropping about 328 feet through 12 nearly concentric levels. Sunlight, wind, and depth all shift from one level to the next, creating a range of temperature conditions within a relatively small space. The Inca are believed to have used these differences to test, adapt, and select crop varieties before sending them out to other climates across the region. Stone retaining walls and a built-in water system let each level function as its own growing plot, turning the entire hollow into a farming machine that needed no modern tools. Moray is therefore more than a set of beautiful rings. It is a place where the Inca turned the land itself into an open-air laboratory. Bivacco Buffa di Perero, Italy. It is hard to believe that on an almost 90-degree cliff, people once built a house with a wooden roof and glass windows as if it belonged on flat ground. At about 9,055 feet above sea level, this shelter reveals only a small front wall, while everything around it is locked in by sheer vertical rock faces. Built between 1915 and 1918 from wood, brick, and stone, the structure once served a harsh, high mountain front during World War I. Inside are only 12 simple wooden bunk beds, with no electricity, no running water, and no toilet, while reaching this place requires climbers to cross iron ladders bolted to the cliff, narrow exposed ledges, and the fear of the abyss below. With no traditional foundation, the house sits neatly inside a natural rock alcove, as if the mountain itself has been holding it in place for more than 100 years. After decades of abandonment and roof collapse caused by avalanches and alpine storms, the site was fully restored by Italy's 6th Alpini Regiment in 2022 and now serves as an emergency shelter for climbers.